How do you build a web app that accepts payments? Better yet, how do you create an app with paywalled content that people have to subscribe to see? In this video, we'll be building a serverless React and Node.js app that first uses Stripe to process user payments, and then that triggers an account to be created. The user gets an email, and this email has their brand new account information, which they can then use to log in and view that paywalled content. Before we dive into the code, I would so appreciate if you left a like on this video so that other people will see it, and subscribe so that you can see my next video. Let's dive in. So what we'll be building in this tutorial is this super fancy subscription site. I did not CSS it, so excuse its appearance. What we'll do though is you can click Get Course Access right here. And then you can enter your email and card information and all that, and then click subscribe. So once you subscribe using that Stripe link, you can sign in with your email and a password that's emailed to you. And then you'll be able to see paywalled content. And in the real world, this would be something like video courses or an ebook download or something along those lines. But for the sake of this, it'll just be a fancy H1. So if you want to learn more, keep on watching and I'll get into the code. Just as a heads up, this tutorial assumes intermediate React, AWS Amplify, and Node.js knowledge. I will link resources for each of the technologies below, and you could use the Node.js code with any front-end stack. So if you wanted to implement the front end in Vue or something like that, you could do that instead. The first step is to create a Stripe account and confirm your email. So you can click on this dashboard to sign in or to sign up. So make sure that you confirm your email address as well, because you'll need to do that in order to generate API keys. So if you go to the settings page and then click checkout and payments links, at the bottom, you should see ability to enable client-only integration. I already have it enabled, so yours will probably be like an on switch or a button to tell you to allow it. Go ahead and do that. We're going to use that for our Stripe checkout, so we don't need to write all of our React components from scratch. Now we're going to go to the products dashboard. So if you click products on this left-hand side, then you can click add product. So then you can put in a name for your product. You can even add an image, a description, all those things. I really won't, but I will also choose standard pricing. I'll choose $20 and I'll make it a recurring payment that the billing period will be monthly. You can also customize this so that it's just one time or uses a different pricing model. So then I'll save the product. And you'll see that a couple IDs are generated. So it has this product ID and then also this pricing API ID. Okay, we'll do npx create React app and then membership site. And now I will change into that directory that I just created. So now I'm going to install the dependencies that I need for this project. So I'm going to run npm i AWS Amplify and Stripe's Stripe.js package. Now I'm going to open up the code in my text editor. And so I'm going to create two different components in my source directory. I'm going to create subscribe.js. And then I'm also going to create signin.js. So we're going to start off with subscribe.js. And I'm going to import load Stripe from Stripe.js. Then I'm going to create a function-based React component. I have a snippet so that I can just do RFC in order to do that, though it imports React, which I no longer need. I'm going to create a button that says Get Course Access. And then I'm going to add an on-click handler to it. Then I'll create the function that handles the click. So we're first going to load Stripe in. So const Stripe equals await load Stripe. And this is going to take my Stripe publishable key. So I'm going to go to home on the Stripe site, and you can see that there's a publishable key, and it should say that it's test mode next to it. So I'll go ahead and copy this publishable key. And I'll put that right there. So the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to use Stripe's redirect to checkout method. So now I'm going to use this redirect to checkout method on Stripe once I've loaded it. And this is going to take an object. And the first item in the object is going to be line items. So first it's going to be price, and I'll leave an empty quote there for a second, and then quantity, which will be 1. This price is going to be the price ID for my item. So if you go back to this Stripe dashboard, you can go to your products and you can get your course, and then you'll see that it has a price ID here, and I'll copy that and paste it back into my code right there under that price. Then I'm going to say mode is subscription. It would be payment if it was a payment, but in this case, I want to keep charging them, so it'll be a subscription. And then I need a success URL. So this success URL will be HTTP localhost 3000. And then the cancel URL, which will happen on an error or if the payment is canceled. I'm going to just do localhost 3000 again with cancel at the end. I'm not actually going to implement this, but in a production app, you definitely should. So the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my app component and render this subscribe component. So I'll go into my app.js, clear out what's in there right now. I'll add in each one my fancy subscription site. Save this, and then I will import that subscribe component. I can delete the logo too. And you can see that VS Code automatically imported the subscribe component. Now I'm going to go into my terminal and run my development server. So I'm going to run my development server, and that will open up localhost 3000 for me. And I'll add it right here. So I will click Get Course Access, and you can see that it takes me to a Stripe subscription page. So what you'll go ahead and do is add in your email address. You should be able to use 424242424242424242, or just like 4 twos until you get to the length of a normal credit card, and that will allow you to test on Stripe without actually paying for an item. So I just quickly filled out this form, and then I'm going to click subscribe. And you can see that it was successful. It took me back to localhost 3000, which is right now all that our app does. So we finished step 1 of the tutorial, which is checkout. So now we're going to need to move on to a webhook handler that creates a new user once the item is purchased. So we're going to go to the command line, and I'll open up a second window here. And what I'm going to do is initialize AWS Amplify for my project. So first, make sure that you have the Amplify command line installed in an AWS account. Again, if you're just getting started with AWS Amplify, I'll link to a different tutorial for you to get started with. So I'll run Amplify init, and it'll ask you to enter name for the project, and it'll infer your configuration. I'll just say yes to that, and choose my AWS profile. So now I need to add authentication, and I'll do that with Amplify add auth. And for this, I'll just pick all the defaults. So default, username, no, I'm done. And then I'll run Amplify push to deploy this to the cloud. So next we'll run Amplify add API. And we'll choose a REST API. I'll just choose that default there, and I'll choose webhook as my URL here. I will choose create a new Lambda function, and I'll choose a default there. I'll also choose Node.js, and I'll use the serverless express.js function. I do want to configure advanced settings, and I want to access other resources, in this case auth, so I'll press the space to select and then enter. And then I'll do create, read, update, delete there. I do not want to do a recurring schedule. I do not want Lambda layers. I don't want environmental variables, but I do want secret values. So I will say yes here. And then we'll choose a name for the secret, which will be stripe key. And then we'll go back to our Stripe dashboard. And if you go to your homepage, you should see this secret key. And what you're going to do is you're going to copy that into your CLI as your Stripe key. And then I'm going to paste in my Stripe key. Then I'll say I'm done. And I won't restrict API access or add another path. Now I'll run Amplify push to deploy this. So now we're going to go to Amplify backend function, and then your membership site or whatever your function was called, and then source. And then once we're inside this source directory, we'll run npm i AWS SDK and Stripe. So we're installing these into that AWS Lambda function so that our backend, essentially, that we're creating has access to these libraries. So now we're working on the backend Node.js code instead of the front end code. So I'll go ahead and open this up in my text editor. So in here, you'll see that there's a app.js file. I'm going to go ahead and cut most of these functions. I'll keep one of the posts for webhook right here, but other than that, I'll clear these out. I'll keep the app.listen as well, and I'll keep the configuration code. Then within the body parser function, I'm going to add this object and say verify function rec res buff. We'll do rec.raw body equals buff.toString. Stripe needs this for the way that they send their request bodies sometimes, so putting that in there for that purpose. So I'm going to now write a function that will retrieve our Stripe secret key for us. So first I need to go ahead and require the AWS SDK. And then if you scroll up a little bit, you'll see that there is this function right here that's like const parameters equals await new AWS SSM. So I'm going to copy and paste that snippet here. And I'm going to write a function around this. So const get stripe key equals async. There. And then I'm going to make it so that this function returns parameters 0.value. So this returns an array of objects. So I'm getting the first item in that array, which should only have one thing in it, and then getting the value from that object. One quick thing is you're writing a production app, you'll probably want to make sure that the request is properly signed from Stripe. So I'll leave a link below on how to do that. It's in their documentation. Just for speed of tutorial, I won't include that code in here, but it would be important to do in a more production app. So I'm going to implement this app.post for webhook right here. So right here, I'm going to make this so that it's async, first of all. And then I'm going to do const stripe key equals await get stripe key. So I'll get my API key back, first of all. And then I'll do const stripe equals require stripe. And that returns a function, and you pass that stripe key to that function. So next I'm going to say customer equals await stripe.customers.retrieve. And to that function, I'm going to pass the request.body.data.object.customer. So this is going to get the customer information from that request body, and then it's going to make a request to Stripe to get more information about that customer. Namely, we need their email. So I'll create another variable with that customer.email. I need to spell customer correctly. So then the next thing that I need to do is I need to create an instance for Amazon Cognito. So Amazon Cognito is the service that we're going to be using for auth. We already under the hood enabled this through Amplify when we did Amplify add auth. We just need to now use it on the node side. And since we're on the node side, we need to use the AWS SDK instead of the Amplify libraries. So I'll do const cognito equals new aws.cognito identity service provider. And we'll say API version is the 2016-04-18 version. This will just keep the versioning up to date. So then we'll run the method cognito.admin create user. And this will allow us again to create a new user on the node side, so on that side rather than on the client. And the user making their own user account, we're going to make it for them. So then user pool ID, which is going to be process.env.auth this. So if you scroll up here, you can see that there's these Amplify params, and this is the one that we need. So I'm going to copy and paste that. Yours is probably going to be slightly different than mine. That's totally fine. You just need to find yours. And again, you can do that by scrolling up there, and it's in the comment. I love the developer experience of that, by the way, that it just like tells you all your variable names if you go to the top there. Then I'm going to do username. And that's going to be the user email. I will do desired delivery mediums, which will be email. And then we need to do user attributes. And it'll be name, which will be email, and the value will also be that user email variable. And then we're also going to do validation data here. So validation data, and then the same information within there. Then we need to provide a callback function. And I'll add a conditional in here. So if there's an error, we will console log that error. Else, we'll console log the data. And we'll do res.send status 200. And hypothetically, this will send the person the email that with the information about their account, and Cognito will automatically generate a password for them. So it'll be some ugly like XY2 capital A semicolon or something along those lines. It'll email them that, and they can use that to send into the app. So we need to add a webhook now. The first thing that I'll do here is I'll need to push this to production, so amplify push. So if you go into your code, you can see that there's this AWS exports file. And within here, you'll see that there is this URL that's generated. So it's like your ID, execute API, US East 1, or your region, and then /dev. So I'm going to have you copy and paste that. And then we're going to go into Stripe. So I copied that URL, and then I'm going to add in a webhook. So click developers right here. So under developers, you'll see webhooks. Go ahead and click on that. And then we'll add an endpoint here. And then we'll do /webhook at the end of that, because our URL that we created was like /webhook. So we'll make sure to include that. And then we'll send the event on payment intent succeeded. So when they successfully paid, then this is when that will fire. So since we're deployed, we should be able to click get course access again, fill out our form again. So I am going to click subscribe here. Please note to anybody watching that that is not my zip code. That's not even the side of the country that I live in. So don't try to go to that. Again, use that 424242 card. That will allow Stripe to work without you having to actually pay anything. I just realized that I still have this res.json here, and that's causing me errors. So I'm going to delete that and re-push. So you can see that when I resubmitted the form, I got email to my email address with a temporary password. So now we need to actually enact user authentication for our app, but we did make it so that the person successfully got an email. So now I'll go back to my sign-in.js component. So I'll create a function-based React component again, and I'm going to import use state for it. I am also going to take the set user function here, and I'm going to define that up in my app.js and pass it down. I'm going to import auth from AWS Amplify. I'm going to create a login function. I'm going to do e.prevent default so that the page doesn't reload. I'm going to do try catch. Inside of the catch error, I'll just console.error the error. And inside the try block, I will do const user equals await auth dot sign in username and password. I'll do set user with that user. And again, set user is this function that I'm passing down from my top level component. Then I'm going to do use state with an empty string here, and I'll set that equal to username, set username, and I'll do the same for password. And then inside of here, I'll create a form. On submit, I will log in. Then I'll create an input with text, which the name you would want to set on a real app, of course, but for now I'll just do a placeholder, which will be username. And on change, I will set username with that e.target.value. And then I'm going to also create a password form. And I'll again do a placeholder. This time it will be password. And on change, instead of setting the username, we'll set the password. Then we'll create a submit. Great. Now we're going to go back to that app component, and we're going to do a use state here as well with the set user right here. So I'll need to make sure to import that use state. And then I'll need to create an instance of that subscribe, which I already did. And then what we'll do here is if there's a user, then we will display the paywalled content. Which in this case will just be a header that says paywalled content, though you would actually want to make this like video courses or something along those lines. And then sign in with the set user set to my set user function from right there. And I'll need to import that sign in component. Okay, so now let's test this out. I will go back to my React component here. Okay, my React app has finished compiling, and so my get course access button is still there, so you can do that, but I'm going to use my email to sign in. And I will use the password that was emailed to me. Okay, so something that I forgot to do though is to configure Amplify. So I'm going to go into my index.js and import config from my AWS exports file. And then I'll run Amplify from AWS Amplify. And then I'll do amplify.configure on that config file. And this will tie my front end to all those Amplify resources. So that was that error that I got right there. I'm going to again try to sign in with that username and password. And this time you can see that I can now see that paywalled content. How exciting is that? So we have successfully first created a way to check out with Stripe using that Stripe form. Then in our Node.js app, we implemented code so that user could be created and emailed to somebody via Amazon Cognito. Then finally, we implemented sign-in. Thanks for sticking with me through this tutorial. I hope you learned something. Leave a comment below with a thing that you learned in this. And if you're looking to learn more about AWS Amplify, check out my Build a Full Stack Next.js app, which will be linked on this screen. Thanks so much. See you next time.